I'll be the judge of that.
Sorry, you caught me staring at my phone. Welcome to the Writer's Life, a place where you get the sight, sound, smells, taste. Sounds of my particular writer's life, where you get the fucking truth about the writer's life. Never forget that. Subscribe if you haven't already. Punch the like button and tap the bell. Really just gently tap it. Give it little tiny slaps. So that you don't miss out on one single episode of my stupid videos. I'm self-deprecating. I hate people who aren't. I don't like it when people take themselves too seriously. All right. So you're busy, so I'll get to the point. The Pretender. So how did a guy like me get to be a full-time writer when I had a career path set for me? In fact, it was like from day one. That was I was going to go into my old man's construction business and live in the burbs, have the big house, the country club, and be the president of the company and live happily ever after, I guess. But I just pictured, as you know, I've gone over this a million times. I just pictured a life of misery. I really wanted to be a writer, and so I became one. And I gave all that other stuff up, which was a good move. It's fun for some people, wasn't for me. But when I was a kid, I grew up almost like an only child because I had two older sisters. One of them's a lot older. The other one's, I think, 3 or 4 years older, something like that. But she wanted to do her things with her friends and stuff like that. And the other one was like in college, I think, before I was even out of grammar school. So because I was alone almost all the time, we lived in an area that was like all farmland almost. It was back when Colony, this area that I live in, for any of my fans chiming in from Africa, I lived in an area that was mostly farmland. So you had like plenty of space to go explore and all that sort of stuff. But now it's all covered in houses, of course. And so my mother was like, we got to get out of here and get to like a suburb where there's other children for the kids to play with, or at least Vince to play with, or whatever. So we did. We moved to in 72 or 3. We moved. I was just a little boy, but we moved to a suburb, and lo and behold, there's kids. They're all girls. My mother's like, ah, shit. So, but I got to be friends with the girls, and we'd play kickball and stuff like that. But it just, I was more or less, once again, alone. The closest thing I had to like a guy friend was the next door nutcase who was in high school, and I would follow him around. I was like an appendage. The point of all this is I spent a lot of alone time pretending. I would pretend I was a soldier. We had a lot of old World War II uniform stuff hanging around, and like German helmets and American helmets, American GI helmets, stuff like that. And because everybody was in the war, right? The war had only been less than 30 years ago. It was like 25 years ago when I was a little boy. And so I'd dress up like as a German soldier and all that sort of stuff. Somebody would come to the door and I'd be dressed like a fucking Wehrmacht. They'd be like, your parents let you go around like that? I'd be like, no, what are you talking about? Anyway, or I'd be a cowboy, or whatever, or I would like kick the football around the backyard and pretend I was a place kicker. And I just spent a ton of time alone, and I would create my own little stories and whatever. And then at night, when I went to bed, I'd bring up a bag of like at 8 years old, I'd bring up like a bag of Doritos and like, I don't know what else was somebody fucking spam. And comic books, just stacks and stacks of comic books. My favorite was Sergeant Rock. The artwork at the time was just incredible. Um, just incredible. And so that's really where I cut my teeth on this business, was just pretending. And in school, I wasn't a very good student. I went to like a Roman Catholic school that was run by nuns. They wore the full habit, even in the summertime, and they farted a lot. A couple of them were nice. A couple of them were just total assholes. Sorry, but you were. You're probably dead now anyway. Um, but I would just look out the window and pretend instead. Like I just was not interested in anything that was going on there. And then later on, like towards the seventh, eighth grade, I really started getting into music, and I wanted to play drums, and I would draw drum kits. like all day and stuff like that. Anyway, I ended up doing okay in grammar school, and then I went to military school where I didn't have to pretend anymore. They gave you a gun, and a sword. Um, so anyway, and also in military school is when I learned about Ernest Hemingway and how he shot himself, and that I was like, wow, people actually do something like that. It was just such a violent act that I couldn't imagine it. And like every day I would stare at his framed photograph on the wall, the famous Kurtz one, where he's about my age at the time. He's got the gray beard and the turtleneck, and he looks like the old man in the sea. And even then, I was just use my imagination and pretend. And we read The Old Man in the Sea that year, I think, or maybe we read the first one we read was Farewell to Arms, which I loved. Anyway, so I knew then. I was like, something's different is going to be in store for me. I'm going to follow the path that they keep telling me I'm supposed to choose, and maybe I'll get over all this. And as soon as I got to college, I was still pretending. I didn't know who I wanted to be or what I wanted to be or how right down to like how I would portray myself. One day I'd be sort of like a punk rocker. The next day I'd be like a preppy or something like that. Because don't forget, this is back in the 80s. And, I just didn't know what I wanted to be. I didn't know who I was. But eventually I started honing it, and I got into a bunch of punk bands and stuff like that. And that's when I started really finding myself. And I really enjoyed, like when I turned 2021, I really enjoyed being on my own and living out in Rhode Island and playing in these bands and stuff like that. But yet I still knew it wasn't going to be my passion. So I went back home and went into the construction business and fucked everything up for myself because I hated it. But almost immediately I started writing stories. It just came to me that was going to be my path almost immediately. But I sucked. I sucked so bad. I sucked for and I kept at, I was writing and writing and writing and writing and writing. And it must have taken me 5 years to like get anything published. It took that much time to like get through those 10,000 hours of shit before, anything decent came out. And yeah, I think I published my first like newspaper and magazine stories at like 27. Right. At the time, I thought I was like an old dude. But now I look back and I'm like, I was only 27, and then I got my first big book deal at like 32 or 3, which at the time I thought, I was like, oh, I'm old. No, I was very young. So anyway, that's the story. That's how I did it. I just was alone all the time, and I was a pretender. I used my imagination to amuse myself, and I'm still doing it. Only this time I'm writing my stuff down and offering it for sale. All right, we got somebody chiming in. Big Philly. Finally reaching the show live again. Yeah, day job has been a nightmare lately. Sorry, Big Philly. Just finished the first Moonlight book. Excellent story. An opening scene was dark, just like how I like it. Yeah, we like that stuff. We like the noir. DC comic reprints, Tales from the Crypt, crime, super stories. got me into writing as a kid. Yeah, like all that stuff, man. Loved it. Loved it. Old Man and the Sea, my all-time favorite book. Yeah. When I was in writing school, Big Philly, um, I remember one snotty teacher saying, like, "Oh, it's like schlock. It's like sentimental schlock." The Old Man and the Sea. I'm like, yeah, well, it only made Ernest Hemingway like $6 million, like over the course of like half a year, back in 1954 or whatever it was, 53. You know, and this guy died poor. So how's that for your sentimental schlock? Anyway, all right. So that's all I got for today. Thanks for chiming in, Big Philly. And I hope to catch you guys tomorrow, God willing. And ciao, ciao.